Now, was it me or was that really, really fast, that intro? I don't know about it.
It
felt really quick, but it is what it is. Hello and welcome to the match report, presented by Free in Midfield. We are your hosts, Cahill and Kojo. Usually Darren joins us, but he is not here today, taking care of those babies. It is what it is, man. That's what he's got. That's what he's got to do. But we are joined by some excellent guests. The honorary member of Free Midfield joins us again, Basil Jacobs. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I am doing good. It's good to be back. Certain teams are on a downward spiral, while certain teams seem to be up in a trajectory. Upward trajectory. So it seems like our fortunes are changing. Every time I appear on a pod, I seem to just be happy and happier compared to the start of the season. So that's a good thing.
Oh, you can't. You can only hope for. You can only hope for that, innit? So I'm there with you. I'm not quite. I'm surprised you're as optimistic as that, considering who you support. But it is what it is, man. D joins us for the first time. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, good, mate. Speaking about trajectories, ours is not heading in a too disappointing direction at the moment. So I'm sure we'll get to that. But really good to be on, guys. So thanks for inviting me. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for joining. If you are listening, make sure you smash the like button and hit subscribe to the channel. But we've got all that passed. So let's get to the results. And we'll start with Liverpool are first on the list. So let's start with Liverpool. 5-0. They beat Watford 5-0. Goals from Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, and Roberto Firmino, surprising everybody with a hat-trick. Did he surprise you most, Steve? It was a great performance. It was wonderful goals from him as well.
I think to be fair, you've got to put that into context. We were expecting to go down there and Watford to be buzzing, new manager bounce, trying to prove to the manager that they've got futures at that football club. And the reality is a culmination of two things. They didn't do that. Perhaps the time that Ranieri joined the club to the time of the game was too short. He wasn't able to implement too much because it kind of looked lost a little bit during the game in terms of tactics. But also the fact that when Liverpool are good, Liverpool don't allow you to do what you want to do. The press is pretty intense. And we do bully teams with our style. We certainly bullied Watford at the weekend. And obviously, Bobby Firmino gets a hat-trick from a collective total of about 4.5 yards. But that's what you're number 9 to do, isn't it? Be in the right place at the right time. So great for him. Great confidence booster for him because he's been looking for a bit of form for a little while now. But we can't not have the little section on Liverpool without talking about, first of all, Salah's ridiculous through ball for Mane's opening goal. The curl on that ball. He just knows that Mane's getting to that ball before the centre-back. That's the only sort of logic you can apply to that. And now he's doing this thing where he stands on the ball and invites people to dive into challenges, and he makes them look absolutely stupid. And 2 games in a row, City and Watford, and obviously City's defenders are of a much higher calibre. But these are still professional footballers who are being made to sit on the floor and look stupid as he's dancing and weaving his way through. And there's a lot been said at the moment on international breaks are terrible things, aren't they? People get out the comparisons locker and it's Hazard versus Salah this time round and Drogba versus whoever you choose. But fact of the matter is, if we're having a conversation about the most informed player in the world, Salah's in that conversation with 1 or 2 other special players. And you know what? That's plenty good enough for me. I'm not going to sit here and argue the toss that he is the best. To be considered amongst them is good for Liverpool Football Club and good for his form, mate.
I mean, let's talk even more about Salah because, I mean, recent years, the discussion about Salah was that he, on the ball, he doesn't look the most pleasant, but he gets you the goals. But now, especially this season, and to be fair, I don't think he was ever that bad on the ball. I just think he wasn't as silky as Sadio Mane. And that was the problem, that people didn't have they just didn't connect the two. But this season, he's, like you said, he's inviting pressure, making defenders look silly. And those 2 goals, they have been absolutely special.
100%, and at the end of the day, he's what we've seen is he joined the club in 2017, and people forget that if he carries on this season the way he started it, he's going to be in a conversation for the Golden Boot for 4 consecutive seasons. That warrants you special status in the league. When his career is finished and he goes and does whatever he's going to do in the future, when we guys like us sit down and talk about the best goal scorers the Premier League have ever had, he's at the same table as a Thierry Henry. Might not be sitting at the top of that table because Henry was a bit special, but he's in the conversation. His numbers are absolutely staggering. And the one thing that's definitely worth mentioning is he misses chances that all of us have seen him miss, and you can't believe he misses them. So if he was clinical, he'd be giving us Messi numbers. That's how that's the potential that is in that man. And his form is sensational this year, and he's building to his peak form, which might be right about now. If you can't believe he could get any better than he is at the moment. I'd like to see it, but it's unlikely. I think he's at the pinnacle of his career, and he's been building with this. But for him being in form last season, the fact that he was in such good form last season, he definitely catapulted us into the reckoning for Champions League. Without Mo Salah, we get nowhere near it. So eternally grateful for Mo's form and the goals that he's scoring.
Let me add to what Steve just said. Right? I know I shouldn't bring this, but comparing it to Grealish, like people look at the price tag, right? And I look at a player like Mo Salah, and that's who you spend £100 million on. Someone whose output is just that ridiculous. Because you look at Mo Salah, he's just so direct. He has an eye for goal. Whether it's dribbling, whether it's a final pass, whether it's being in position to score. That's what you pay £100 million for someone who's going to make those key decisive goals in those key moments, or make a difference in those key moments. And that's where I've always argued about Grealish's price tag, because he doesn't offer that. And people have said, well, he plays in a poor Villa team, but you can still post up the numbers, because even when Liverpool weren't that great last season, he was still scoring goals and posting up the numbers. And that's what you pay that kind of figure for. Someone in those key moments, is going to get you those goals or give you that moment of brilliance and magic, as he did against City and as he did against Watford for the opening goal with that fantastic pass, and also the goal he scored.
What's interesting is that, sorry to interrupt, is that
no, go ahead.
About to go into a contract renewal, and the figure that's been bandied around today is 400k a week. He's worth every penny of 400k.
Absolutely.
If you're going to pay Messi 800 and Ronaldo 600, you've got to pay Salah 400,000. What that does on a bigger picture for Liverpool is it changes the face of what the club is and the business model. And FSG cannot ignore the fact that the Liverpool Football Club changes the day he signs that paperwork. Not so much for the guys that are in the squad at the moment, because we sat in the dressing room looking at him going, wow, this guy's doing madness every single week and he's a special footballer and he warrants the money. Yeah. But when we go and knock on somebody's door and try and sign their star player, that's the barometer of the wages those guys are going to be looking at. So it kind of forces FSG to change their business model. And me as a Liverpool fan, I'm really interested to see how that plays out, because it might change the financial constraints that Klopp's been working under.
Koji, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just, back to the thing about him not looking silky. We have seen players being raved over for looking silky, but not even near the output that the player has. His output is ridiculous. I think for me, personally, I prefer efficiency over style. I mean, at the end of the day, look, we can even relate it back to playing style. Liverpool style is not the most attractive, but boy, they put teams away. And that's what you're there to do. You're there to put teams away, make your mark, and score goals and win games. And that's what they do. And with Salah, that's a gem that they have. You said it right. Just because he's not as silky as Salah, or he's always as Mane, and he's usually compared to Eden Hazard. Obviously, Hazard being the premier dribbler that he was when he was in the Premier League with Chelsea. But you don't need to be a high-level dribbler to be a top player. You need to be efficient in your job and do your job very well. And Salah's someone that drop you a 7 minimum most of the time, which is what you want.
7? I think that's a bit low, to be honest with you.
Right now it's a 9 minimum. But overall, in his tenure at Liverpool, you know that he's going to produce for you. He was doing that at Roma. He did that at Fiorentina for a year. And at Liverpool, he's taking it to a whole new level. And he's getting better. So, right, as long as he's there scoring goals, Liverpool will always be a threat. He's fantastic.
You can also say... Sorry. We talk about eye test. Hazard had the eye test. If you're honest and you look at Hazard's career, he could have achieved a lot more than he did. We would look back on his Premiership career and say, did I actually maximise my potential? No, I don't think he did. He had a lot more to offer. He was the guy that was closest to making that quantum leap from being a great player to being in a bracket with the two GOATs that we've seen throughout the last 15 years. What wins you titles, eye test or stats? Stats win you titles all day long, don't they? Because stats lead to prizes. So, yes, I get that Hazard was a sensational player to watch. But at times the end product wasn't there, and his goals and his assists against Salah is evident. So I'm with you, Kojo. Mo Salah scoring special goals at the moment, which we've not seen him do before. But he is a very efficient guy. His stats, his numbers are incredible, and those numbers bring you prizes. If you can score 25 goals a season and assist 15, and your two partners up front get 15, 20 goals each, you're there at the end of the season when they're giving out the prizes.
Big Wrong trying to stir up some controversy in the comments.
I love
Not
it.
quite yet. Not quite yet.
Well, if they want him, they got to get ready to pay at least 250 million. That's what I'm putting.
Do you think that will bother them? I don't think it will bother the Saudis, to be honest. But I was saying before that this Watford game had the potential to be like a banana skin for Liverpool, considering that they were the team that beat you to stop you from becoming going unbeaten the entire season. But I mean, Kojo, what happened with this Watford side? Because obviously, like Steve said, new manager bounce came in. You would have assumed that they were up for it, considering that they had the confidence that they have already beaten this side. So what wrong for Watford?
For the teams that are inferior in quality, you need to be battling for every ball, and they just weren't doing that whatsoever. Liverpool came with the quality, but they also came with the assertiveness. They were very aggressive when they went for balls, first balls, second balls, third balls, and that's where they lost it. And as you watch the game, you could see their life being sucked out of the Watford players because they recognised that Liverpool were just as up for the fight as they were. It wasn't a case of quality versus underdogs and the underdogs going to try and fight and claw. Liverpool were up for every battle, and they won every battle cleanly. Even the first goal, Matip ran directly forward into the midfield area, won the header straight away, and then Salah shrugs the opponent off. I think it's Danny Rose.
Danny Rose, yeah.
And from that moment, you could see they realised what kind of match they were in. Not only was it a match of quality, it was a match of battles also. And Liverpool were not going to let any balls go away. So, new manager bounce doesn't work all the time, especially when you're considering you're facing Liverpool. If you're Watford, Claudio Ranieri's got pedigree, Premier League winner. But I liked what he said at the end of the game. He just said, look, it's a big job, but if they listen to what I say and what I'm trying to do, it'll become a much more of an easier job. He's just trying to get results, get them out of the rut, and then get what he wants. So I think they'll be okay. They're not in my free to get relegated, funnily enough, but I think this is just
Watford.
one of those. Yeah, I have a feeling someone else is going, but we'll talk about it another time. But yeah, it's a lesson for them because they need to recognise Liverpool and even I would say City as well, because City are looked to be a silky side. But when City need to battle, they will battle. They'll go toe to toe with you on the full pitch. They'll need to recognise they need to come with a bit more fight, not put their heads down, keep their heads up, and they'll be all right. But it was a shocking defensive performance, though. Horrid.
And you mentioned City going toe-to-toe with any team. I'm thinking Leicester City will go toe-to-toe with any team because they went toe-to-toe with this Manchester United team and they absolutely smacked your foot.
Did I just segue to my own... Wow, okay.
Own downfall, bro, absolutely. Goals from Mason Greenwood, Yuri Tielemans, Calgar Sinokyu. I thought it's Czech Sinokyu. Okay, fair enough. Marcus Rashford came back and got a goal. Jamie Vardy and Patson Daka. Now, where shall we start with this one, Kojo? It's up to you, my friend. Please, just enlighten us, because I'd like to start with Harry Maguire, but you can go whoever you want to start.
You know, I'll say
actually,
this.
no, we'll leave Harry Maguire for Basil.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'll say this. Watford lost 5-0, Man United lost 4-2, and Watford defended better than Man United. That's how I'll describe it. Man United's defensive performance from all over the pitch was shocking. We'll go from front to back. United don't have a collective press. There's no plan to press. The beef within United fan base is they weren't very sure about Ronaldo coming because Ronaldo doesn't press. My thing is, when have United ever pressed as a good unit ever? And past 2013 anyway. So we haven't had a collective unit going forward. So it's not a Ronaldo problem. It's not a Bruno Fernandes problem. It's not a Rashford problem. It's a collective problem. That's number one. Number two, again, you don't play Pogba and Matic together. They had that little spell, whatever. But then, whether it's McTominay and Fred, whether it's those two, whether you bring Donny van de Beek into the midfield, you always notice a gap between the midfield and the defense, and it's always exposed by every opponent in some way, shape, or form within games. And then when you go to the back, where do I even begin with this one? There is no cohesion, and they are so disjointed, and I had a feeling that Rafael Varane was not going to save this United defense. There's always this thing about defenders complementing each other. So because Maguire lacks agility because he lacks speed, Rafael Varane can be the perfect foil for him to chase back. And my thing is, when you look at the great partnerships, it wasn't, Nesta wasn't fast. So if he misses the ball, Maldini can chase back for him. Or Colo Torre is faster than Sol Campbell. So, he can go back. If Sol Campbell misses, they work collectively as a unit and they complement each other perfectly. That's not about covering each other. It's about helping each other together and making sure your opponents don't have a sniff when they approach your box. No matter the partnership, what it looks like right now is everyone gets a sniff when they're playing Man United Football Club. The goals we conceded were pathetic. Not winning the first ball, Maguire, our ball that was passed to him, people were blaming De Gea for that. I'm pretty sure the first basic of football is stay on your toes when the ball comes to you, go to the ball first. Great shot, great strike by Tillmans, by the way. I'll give him that credit for that.
Bro, that was
beautiful goal.
Beautiful, man.
The second goal was scored by who was it again? Sorry,
Senyoku.
Yeah, oh boy, that's said about that one, to be honest. Man United had a set piece coach, by the way. That's just for anyone listening. The third goal was.
Let's not start with set piece coaches. Arsenal are up soon, so don't worry about it. But anyway, continue.
The third goal made me angry the most because we had literally just equalized. So the fact that you get back into the game and within a minute you are now pegged back to going back for Leicester to go in front again
wasn't it like something like 13 seconds?
Yeah, something like that. And what worried me or what scared me is someone that is a regular in our midfield, which is McTominay. If you saw the way he didn't even approach. Jose Perez is allowed to just wander into the box, and he's backing off. And I compared it to it's just there's a point, so don't get annoyed. When Hazard scored that goal at Stamford Bridge, when Koscielny was backing up so much, and he wasn't near enough his goalkeeper, and I'm thinking, how much do you want to back up into your own box before you suddenly realize, oh wait, I must engage him and stop him from getting near enough to cause a threat. Lo and behold, Jamie Vardy, of all people, was left in the box by himself. Another issue. And then the Daka goal. Wan-Bissaka and Harry Maguire. I mean, I've said this time and time again. I don't rate Wan-Bissaka that highly as a defender. And I'll tell you why. One-on-one defending is great, but there's more aspects to defending than just one-on-one defending. You have to know how to mark people, track runs, be positionally aware, and he lacks in those aspects of the games, and that's why he gets caught out quite a bit. People are blaming Maguire for the goal, and I get it. He was at fault as well because he was actually marking anybody. He's the most dominant defender in the year for Man United by far, by a country mile. So he should be engaging someone. He should be marking. He should be blocking. But Wan-Bissaka looks at his man, holds him, and then as soon as the ball whips in, he's ball watching. He has no awareness. He has no idea what's going on. And Daka's allowed to make that run to the box. And he's in a good position because as a striker, you're hoping for the ball to come into an area where you can take advantage. And lo and behold, he did. This is the kind of thing that happens at Man United Football Club. This is a recurring theme. This isn't something new. So, look, I'm not surprised. I predicted 2-2 at the beginning of the game because I did think we're going to concede 2 stupid goals. They doubled it. So, that sums up Man United in a nutshell. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I am absolutely, because we're not going to swear on this, pooping myself for the game against Liverpool. Because if Leicester can expose Man United like that, Jesus Christ, it's going to be a massacre at Old Trafford. But
it's going to be a massacre.
There you go.
Basil, I feel like we are licensed to talk about Starboys has been revoked, but let's talk about Mason Greenwood because that strike was phenomenal.
Do you know what? It's definitely fun. It was a fantastic finish. He's a great finisher. I don't know if the right wing is the right position for him because it is. For me, it's like you can play that position when your front three is fluid. I remember there was a few years ago. It was Martial. It was actually him, Martial, and Rashford. Like how they were all rotating, picking up the spaces and the gaps that were opening up. And they're moving in there and was scoring a lot of goals. I think that was about 2 years ago. I think that was the season that Martial scored, 20 plus goals. And when you have that kind of fluid movement, similar to when Barcelona had the front three of Suarez, Messi, and Neymar, where you have that fluidity between the players, it works because the player doesn't stick to position, has license to roam about and move. When I watch Mason Greenwood on the right wing, I feel something about him is being lost a bit. Like he's sometimes in games and sometimes not in games, but give him a chance, he's going to score a goal and the quality is going to shine through. And I don't know how Ole is managing that situation in terms of the play. I think he's trying too much to keep players happy. And sometimes you have to just maybe upset a few players, select the right team, mold certain players, and put them in the right positions. And I think he's trying to facilitate having Ronaldo in the team, having Greenwood there, because obviously he knows that he's a top talent and we have to put our top talent there. Trying to facilitate Rashford being there and Bruno being there, and it's not working. I don't know what they're working on in the training ground, but it doesn't seem to be fluid. It just seems that individual quality like that, a special moment, is what is getting them the goals, rather than maybe a collective performance from a number of players working well together. And, you know, he's a talent. I don't know if right wing is the right place to play him unless he's going to be fluid. I still think he's more as a centre forward. You know, put him the right ball, give him the right balls with the right movement, and he will score goals. But he was a fantastic striker, and we know that give him half a chance, he will score those type of goals. I guess the only thing that he needs to probably do to improve his game, which is going back in a few games prior, is maybe learning when to release the ball a bit quicker, or sometimes play other players in rather than always looking to get the strike off. I think that would help him improve his game a bit.
I mean, Steve, it seems like it's all going wrong for Manchester United, and everybody seems to want, well, everybody apart from Gary Neville wants to lay the blame at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I mean, it's got to be untenable right now. You can't get a goal, you can't score a goal, and then 13 seconds later concede and expect to keep your job. And it's getting worse and worse. Manchester United, there were talks of top four, there was talks of championship runs, there were talks of Champions Leagues, and it's all just evaporating. I
think the thing with Ollie is we need to recognise this is a guy who was offered his dream job and he's never going to turn it down being Manchester United manager. His capabilities are well below what Manchester United need right now. So I said to somebody the other day, I don't necessarily put all the responsibility for what Manchester United are going through at Ollie's door. They should never have recruited him for that position because the club's bigger than he is. The size of the project is bigger than he is, rather. And then they shouldn't leave him in that position. They're not making a substitution for 110 minutes in a European final. A whim, hoping that Pogba or Bruno could do something majestic and win you the game, says an awful lot about tactical awareness.
Yeah.
You look at his coaching staff. What's Michael Carrick and the other guy giving him? I don't know. What's Mike Phelan doing? In years gone by, Mike Phelan was like what Liverpool had in Ronnie Moran, who was the go-between between the players and the manager, because the manager needs to be, certainly Alex Ferguson was a little bit aloof when it comes to the players and not get down to a level of relationship with that influences his decisions. So the situation is, for me, is if you take Ollie out of the equation and you move him on, and it's a bigger question, and you bring in a Zidane, I don't think there's a manager in world football, and I would include Klopp and Pep in this, that can get you a decent double pivot out of that centre midfield. I just don't think it's possible. I think you look at those managers, and you look at what they try to do, and this is the difference. And it was alluded to it earlier that Manchester United have no style of play. You can't. Manchester United play off the cuff football. The game unfolds in front of them, and they try to take advantage of individual situations which relate to skill and sort of impulsive football, as opposed to playing a very rigid game plan, which is what Liverpool have got. So I struggle to see how any manager coming in will be able to make a double pivot out of Adam McFred and Matic for differing reasons. And if I was any team playing Manchester United, my whole game plan would be to play in the space in front of the back four, because they just can't deal with it. And it would be a concern. And people are saying Zidane. Well, if Zidane's coming in, is he bringing Casemiro with him, because that's what you need? Is he taking McTominay with him and bringing someone else in? Manchester United's problem doesn't disappear with the replacements of Ollie. It'll need 2 transfer windows to try to resolve the midfield issues for me. But no, his job is untenable. I don't know why he's still in the position. He really doesn't have the minerals to do the job. He's a nice guy, right? What he did was take a club that was suffering a little bit of internal turmoil, settle it all down, make people know each other again. And there's a lot to be said for that. But when it comes to it, and you go and set up your side against a Unai Emery side in Europe, and Unai Emery's got tactical awareness. What Villarreal did was very clever, the way they played. He didn't have an answer for it. The most frustrating thing for Manchester United fans must be when it's not going well for Manchester United to see him stood on the touchline with his arms folded, looking lost. He's not a guy that can make a change in real time and switch something about. He's not a guy that's got the personnel to make that change and switch something about. So I've a degree of sympathy for him. Listen, Jadon Sancho is going to be a tremendous footballer, but the £73 million spent on Jadon Sancho should have been spent on a specialist 6, because Manchester United were at the time the only team in for Sancho, and they could have afforded to wait 12 months and then do it. Their development and their progress with a designated specialist number 6, a sitter who does that, nothing else, like Fabinho does for Liverpool and Rodri does for Manchester City to great effect, and Jorginho does it, and Kovacic can do to some degree at Chelsea. The pieces of the jigsaw start with Solskjaer, but there's lots of things that need to be corrected, and their recruitment and their management of Ollie's situation is as much to blame as anything for me.
Yeah.
Go on, you go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say just 2 things to add, Steve, because especially Steve mentioned a good point, the Sancho signing, and I've always said that I don't think United needed Sancho, and it's funny because when I listen to a lot of pundits, because I used to watch German football when he was playing, and when I listened to them, they all had a misconception as to what type of player Jadon Sancho was. I remember one time McManaman was saying that he was better than prime Neymar, and I was like, ridiculous comment. During the Champions League game. Ridiculous. And the thing is that when you look at Sancho in the Bundesliga isn't great defensively, because obviously most teams are more concerned about their offensive play. So there's a lot of space that opens up in behind. And when you look at Jadon Sancho, and obviously a lot of the assists he was running into space, or even when he was dribbling the ball, he was running into open space rather than taking on a lot of players. His take-ons was mainly in the final third, where that's where you should be taking the take-ons. And secondly, he had a lot of movement from the Dortmund players, where he could do 1-2s, link up, and obviously then play it back to a player who can score. Or also, like I said, space opens up for him to run into space where he could score goals. The Premier League is very different, where it's a lot more compact. People don't give you a lot of space, and people close you down as much. And so people had this misconception of Jadon Sancho that it was this type of player who was going to take the ball, maybe run past 3 players and create for United. And I used to speak to her and I said, you will probably struggle when it comes into the Premier League, because there's a different caliber of game than the German League, and you won't get as much space to operate. The bigger issue he has as United, like I said, is just the lack of movement from the players. As Steve said, United don't have a game plan. So even when he's on the ball, you're looking around, it's like, what are the other players doing? And sometimes they're not making the right movements to utilize Jadon Sancho as effectively as they can. And that's the reason why he's struggling. And Steve, and as alluding to what Steve says, if they have a better manager with a better system of play, better tactics, you may get much more out of Jadon Sancho than what you're getting now. And so, yeah, like I said, I didn't think, and like I said, you had Martial, Rashford, who could operate, Greenwood, who you could move around in those positions. So I thought to myself, why would you need Sancho? Your priority would have been a midfielder. You know, maybe Partey, you could have got him before Arsenal did. Maybe Camavinga, you could have bought him, taking a risk on a young player. Could have been maybe a player who could have been 10 years in that position. You know, those are the type of positions you need to sort it out before you went and got a Ronaldo or a Jadon Sancho. And then my final point, like I said, I don't really rate Maguire. I remember people saying Varane was the missing jigsaw to that United defense. And I used to always say that United needed 2 defenders rather than 1 defender. Yesterday highlighted it, because I said, for me, Maguire is a good squad player, a player you can utilize in certain games. But throughout the whole season,
£80 million squad player.
Unfortunately, that's ability-wise as a squad player. But that's the thing. I've always said he's not reliable throughout a whole season. There's key games where he switches off. I mean, there's times where he doesn't know what to do, whether to engage in a player or whether to drop off. And then when he engages, I have no idea what he's doing. He sticks out a leg and then players just kick the ball past him. And then his turn of pace to react to that is shocking. And I've always said his concentration for me is one of his biggest weaknesses in football. And when he doesn't concentrate, it generally leads to a lot of chances created for the opposing team or a lot of goals. And like I said, if you're a top quality defender and an 80 million defender, you can't rely on another defender to cover your sins. You have to be a top quality defender. You know, we can't say because Varane isn't there, oh, Maguire isn't in best form. Maguire should still be performing even though Varane isn't next to him. You know, he's your captain, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm. I'd rather not answer that.
Yeah, he has to lead by example. And look at yesterday was an appalling display by him.
I don't think he sees danger at all, ever. He's in Cloud Cuckoo land. You know, the goal the fourth goal, the one where he's on the post and he steps 3 yards off the post. There's a massive space in behind him. If that was the first time we'd see this, you could say, okay, then a couple of weeks out, he's not with it. But I don't buy this. He wasn't fit.
Yeah.
You don't have to be fit to see where a ball's going to land. You know, you have to be able to read the game and understand the dangers. The £80 million for Harry Maguire is arguably one of the most bizarre transfer fees you'll ever see, because week in, week out, he shows us his inadequacies. And I am actually gobsmacked. And this isn't an overreaction. I can't believe he's a professional footballer. That's all I think. You know, he's good in the air because he's a unit, right? And the ball lands on his head and it goes back 40 yards and everyone goes, great clearance, Harry. Playing the ball down the side of him, he's got absolutely no chance. Have a player with guile, a bit of creativity around him, he's got absolutely no chance. I will concede he's good at carrying the ball out and starting passages of play down the left-hand side. He can see a pass. My worry would be when he's 40, 50 yards away from the goal, you don't want him seeing passes, because if it breaks down and you're playing against a Salah and you've got Shaw doing an overlap to cross, you break it down. Salah's, as we saw against Denver Bar, there's a danger that someone could get in behind the entire Manchester United defence. That is because his starting positions when it breaks down are absolutely appalling. He just doesn't see danger.
This is why my final point on United is when me and Kel spoke about United, I think last season or season before, I said that I feel like United needed more than just those 3 signings, and in terms of positions wise, because the quality is not there. It's kind of alarming to me that Mourinho actually wanted him at Hull. Mourinho wanted him at Hull for a much cheaper price because he wanted to add him as a squad player. He didn't want to bring him as a starter. He didn't want to have him as a main centre-back. He wanted to add to the defence and say, this is someone that's built for a different occasion. Essentially, when you're playing a different type of opponent, take the pressure off David De Gea. Because De Gea, when we finished second, had a monstrous season. But if you have defenders for different occasions, we can deal with threats better. That's what he was looking for. Now, when it comes to these positions, like, for example, Steve mentioned the number 6. My issue with, there's no issue with signing a number 6. My issue with Ole is he looking to sign a number 6 to play the formation, to do a sort of like a 4-3-3? I don't think he's looking to do so. He's so fixated on a 4-2-3-1. So there's no variety. When people come to play Man United, they know what they're up against. Same formation, same sort of approach. And like Steve said, all you have to do is literally just target the space between the midfielders and the centre-backs, and then you're in. It's that simple. But even Sancho is a signing as well. I agree with what Basil said. His style of play is not what we're looking for. But if you sign that player and your intention, if it is your intention, is to play him on the right side, you need to find a style of play that helps not only accommodate him, but gets the best out of him, that equally gets the best out of everybody else. That's your job as a manager and coach of the football club. Quite frankly, he's not doing that. So, look, I think, firstly, I know why his position is not untenable yet, because surprisingly, this is his best start to a season as Man United manager.
No way.
Yeah, so they're looking at that as improvement. This is my issue. They're looking at that and they're saying, well, it's the best start he's had, and they're not that far off top because it's only October. That's what they're going to say.
If Arsenal win, I think they're like 2 points off United. So that tells you.
No, but this is
that tells you everything.
Spurs fans have been screaming at Nuno, but they're on top of us already. So how good is the season Man United having under Ole if the board are happy about it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so look, I think he's got so much to work on. I'm just hoping they can work on it away from Man United. But yeah, honestly, we got a long way to go. And
it's one of those, it's one of those things where, I mean, teams. I mean, I say this being fully aware that I'm an Arsenal fan, that teams just have bad runs of form and then they come against us and then they absolutely pounce us. I mean, Leicester's run of form, the last 5 games were Man City lost, Brighton Hove Albion lost, Burnley draw, Palace draw. Then they come to you, and it's a 4-2 victory. I mean, they haven't been playing well all season, and Brendan Rodgers has a lot to answer for, I think personally, defensively especially. But is this a change for them? Is a change in fortunes for Leicester coming? Do you think, or is it just an anomaly and it will go back to I don't know, regular scheduled programming?
No, it's a confidence booster. They got a good squad. They actually got some good players in there, so I think it's a confidence booster. I think because they've sort of been on the edge of getting to Champions League and sort of thrown it away, people have this expectation of them to be close already. You should be in and around that area. But every team in the Premier League improves. They weren't the only team that improved this year. So Mara is a good signing. Patson Daka is a good signing. But they're not the only club in and around that area to improve their squad. And, if we're going to keep it blunt, they don't have the quality that Liverpool possess. They don't have the quality that Chelsea possess. They don't have the quality that City possess. So that leaves one spot. And, people will argue that Man United on paper have a better squad, but obviously because they're more of a cohesion unit at Leicester, that's why they're able to win this game. They'll get results and they'll come back, they'll climb the table. I just don't know if they are good enough to get Champions League football. I don't think so, but, it wouldn't surprise me if they got a run of form and got close again and then came back out again. That seems to be the theme with Leicester.
Yeah, I mean, their next few games are quite interesting. So Brentford, Arsenal, Leeds, and Chelsea. So boom, that's going to be.
I think they'll win one. I think they'll probably draw another one and lose two.
They're another team that suffer from a manager that can't fix things during the game. Brendan Rodgers, when he was at Liverpool, and when Brendan Rodgers came to Liverpool, the biggest thing he brought to Liverpool was his ego. Now he's changed that a little bit. He's been away and licked his wounds at Celtic, and he's kind of reinvented himself a little bit. He won't play against teams who set up defensively like Manchester United did every week, and that did help. Yeah. When Greenwood scored the opening goal, because you're quite right, that Leicester's form's been stinking up the Premiership for the last month or so, and I think if Man United win that game, there's a certain amount of pressure on Rodgers. But how fickle is football? That if Man United go on and win that game, Rodgers is under pressure because Leicester win 4-2. He's elevated to sort of hero status for the weekend, and all the pressure's off. That's football, and that's how it is. You're quite right about some of the additions. Vestergaard will be a good addition when he settles in. They got Ryan Bertrand on a free as well. So the problem is they probably brought in too many players at once. And this is a Rodgers thing. Rodgers likes to play Championship manager and go and sign everybody that's available. You can't inject 7 new players into your first team squad and not expect that to take a little while to gel. And I agree with Kojo. I think they'll finish in a similar position to where they finished last year. They've got too much quality not to. Like a young Harvey Barnes, who's a real he's going to be a superstar. And Maddison didn't play particularly well against Man United and got the hook because of it. And obviously his replacement, Kojo's dug out the fact that he got too deep into the box for Vardy's goal. Leicester will be okay. They'll finish. Their expectation is to finish sort of in Europa League spots. I think these days. I think as you quite rightly said, there's 3 teams that are head and shoulders at the moment, and if Manchester United sort themselves out, they've got a squad good enough to challenge for 4th place. You wouldn't rule out a Tottenham or an Arsenal putting a run together because nobody's putting their hand up to say, "Listen, guys, you come and take 4th place off us." That's in the melting pot. Aston Villa can have a run at that. West Ham probably in the box seat to have a run at that at the moment, but there'll be 5 or 6 that'll be looking at 4th place, and then below that, those that if Manchester United don't get 4th place for a club that size, that's a disaster. But for the rest of the teams to challenge for 4th place and end up in the Europa League ticks all the boxes when you look at the seasonal expectations. So yeah, Leicester will be okay. They'll finish there and thereabouts.
Manchester City also got a victory this weekend, 2-0 against Burnley. Goals from Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne. Kojo, let's go to Basil for this one. Bernardo Silva. I think everybody would agree that he is one of those inconsistent players that you just never know what he's going to you're going to quite get out from him, especially the last couple of years. But I mean, he's back in form. It seems he's scoring. He's in the goal, so that's a blessing for Pep.
It's a weird one with City, right? And City are the only team that can potentially get away with it. Maybe Chelsea. Is that when you have a squad with the depth that City have, you can have players going in and out of form, and it's a weird one. So you have it all the time. Sterling, Mahrez, Bernardo Silva. They seem to have a purple patch. Then the performances seem to dip. Then they're out of the squad. Someone else replaces them, ups their performances. Then they're back in the squad, and then the performances raise again. And I think maybe them and Chelsea are probably the only team that can get away with players not consistently performing, because they can be replaced at any moment of a time, and someone else will come in and just take over from where the last player left off. Like I said, Bernardo Silva is a funny one because he's got the quality. He's a fantastic footballer, especially on the eye. Just isn't consistent enough. And I think I think maybe a lot of City players maybe suffer from this, is that because they're not main guys in the squad, in terms of sometimes you have players with certain quality and they want to be the main star in the squad, but everything is built around them, and maybe that's the environment that they thrive in. I think players suffer from not being the main focal point in the team, and that's why they go in and out of performances. Like Mahrez was the main guy at Leicester, and we saw the performances there. He comes in at City, he's just another player. The performances isn't consistent enough. Same with Grealish, he was the main guy at Aston Villa. The performances this season, for me, on a person, hasn't been consistent enough. I'm not saying he's playing badly, but it hasn't been to a very high standard. Same with Sterling. Sometimes he has good performances, then the performances aren't good enough. And I think I look at certain players and I think if you were the main star at another team, maybe we may see that consistency because the team is built around them.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's probably the reason why a lot of City players suffer. Because you look at Salah, everyone knows he's the main guy at Liverpool. He can do what he wants. Even sometimes when he shoots and he doesn't pass, it doesn't faze him. Maybe when you look at other players and they're giving a look like, you should have played me that ball, it doesn't faze him because he's the main guy and everything is built around Mo Salah being successful at Liverpool. You put Salah at City, where he's just another number, he'll probably still score goals, but we may not see that consistency because you're having to share the burden and the load with other players. And I think that's probably the problem you get at City, which is why players like Bernardo Silva, you look at them 1 minute and they look fantastic, the next minute you're thinking, wow, he looks awful.
I mean, let's go to you, Steve. I'm going to talk about, you did mention Sterling there, and for me, I feel like he's kind, not a scapegoat, but he's being unfairly treated considering what he done for Pep, especially in the first few the title winning seasons where he scored about 30 goals a season, which is a crazy number. And considering that you obviously have first-hand experience with Sterling, but not this Sterling, what is going wrong for him? Because he gets in the England team and he's in the goals, but once he hits that City team, it seems like his confidence drops and he just isn't as clinical as we've known him to be.
He's an interesting character. There are some issues around sometimes his conduct, sometimes the way he is, the way his demeanour around the club. You know, we saw that with the Joe Gomez situation. We saw that when he came out 2 years ago in a press conference and said, nobody wants to see Liverpool win the title, do they? They don't need to do things like that, okay? That might be how you feel. All he did was motivate Liverpool to go and try that much harder. You know, our team talked for us that week. So I think, just listening to Basil there, some really interesting and good points. I think the issue you have with someone like City is, because they've got 5 players who can play with width. You've got Mahrez, you've got Silva, you've got Sterling, you've got Grealish, you've got Foden, you've got the possibilities are endless. When one player plays really well, and when Bernardo Silva plays well, Manchester City play well, I will say that much because his work rate is absolutely phenomenal in both directions. Pep can fall in love with players for 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time because they're doing it there and then. And then they have a bad game and he brings in Foden, and Foden has a worldie and he falls in love with Foden for 4 or 5 or 6 games. And that's not uncommon with squads of that nature. That's one of the hardest things to manage the balance. So Sterling's been there the longest out of all of the names that we've just mentioned. Is probably the guy that Guardiola feels, I've seen as much as I can get out of this guy. Jack Grealish is an unknown quantity for City. How good could he be? Everybody's waxing lyrical, and rightly so, about Phil Foden because he's going to be an absolutely tremendous player in years to come. Yeah. As I just said, when Bernardo Silva's playing well, he's on the team sheet, end off. And then you've got to look at Mahrez, who you know, would get in pretty much any other team in the Premier League. Maybe not Liverpool because our right side's tied up with our man Salah. Yeah. And then you can take it one step further. One of the most exciting wingers in European football, Leroy Sané, had to leave the club because he couldn't get the games he wanted, and he couldn't get the pat. Some players need a pat on the back, and some players need to be loved. And I think if you give Sané a big hug every time he comes off the pitch, he goes out there and puts a shift in the next week for you, and it's difficult to balance how you manage all of those superstars. You know, some players are a bit more precious and a bit more sensitive than others, and I think now might be the time, correctly so, for Sterling to think about potentially another project. And it happens, and it's not wrong that it happens. You know, we've seen Suarez go to Barcelona and tear it up. We've seen Ronaldo go to from Manchester United to Real Madrid and tear it up. So your stellar, your talismanic players do sometimes tire and need a fresh challenge. If Ronaldo can leave Manchester United and all their pomp and go and do bigger and better things at Real Madrid, it's not so inconceivable that someone like Sterling could think his time at Manchester City was coming to an end.
I'll add this quickly just to Steve. I also blame Pep Guardiola a bit, to be honest, because you're looking at two different Sterlings. When you look at the Sterling at Liverpool to the Sterling at City, it's a completely different Sterling. And, you know, Sterling at Liverpool was an exciting player. He could dribble the ball, take on players, had a bit of flair. Pep has sort of taken all of that away from him and created him just to be efficient, move into this area. When you have the ball, pass the ball here. You know, obviously he's made him a much more, I think, tidy technical player. I think you've lost that kind of special shine that Sterling used to have when he was at Liverpool. Like even now, when he dribbles now and tries to take on players, he sometimes struggles to take on players one-on-one sometimes. And at Liverpool, every time he got the ball, he was always onto the defender. And because of that, Sterling sort of became a system player. And when the system in itself wasn't thriving for him, you sort of saw sometimes in games he had nothing to offer. And similar to Steve, I think sometimes you need that fresh challenge to just reinvent yourself again. And I think that's where we're at with Sterling.
In his career at Liverpool, he played in the team when Suarez was arguably one of the best players in Europe. Suarez dragged all the players around him to levels they didn't even know they could do. And what Sturridge and Sterling did in particular was they capitalised on the space that Suarez created, because he would go and take on the whole defence and quite capable of going past 2 or 3 players, and then Sterling would fill in the spaces behind him, and he benefited from that. The interesting thing for me is when he left the club, his rationale was he wanted to play through the centre. Well, he's never really played through the centre for Manchester City, so these are the things that Liverpool fans don't forget. I see now and then on Twitter, Sterling's unhappy at Man City. Would you have him back? Not because of the way he behaved. No, I think he'll go abroad. Personally, I think he'll end up abroad. He's a potential player for someone like a Real Madrid, because they've got to reinvent themselves with different players, haven't they? Because look at their own transfer policy this summer was lighten the load, get rid of some wages in Varane and Ramos, and then sign Camavinga for very, very little money. They didn't really go large, so they might be stealing themselves for a marquee signing, and that just might be Sterling. That might be the impetus he needs to go and play. He'd enjoy Spanish football because of the fact that it's quite a slow build-up and then it accelerates in the final third, and that would probably suit his game. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. I don't think he helps himself sometimes.
It could be like a test of character for me, because I can't remember a time. Obviously, he burst into the scene at Liverpool, became kind of a bit of a quick starter, I would say, in that Liverpool team. And then he went to City and immediately was a starter in that squad as well. And as Basil rightly pointed out, in the first couple of years, he was the goal-getter. He was the game winner at times, especially near that far post. But I say it could be a test of character, because if this is your first time in that situation where you are not really seen as one of the main men, and you're alluding to the players that can have out wide, but even Gabriel Jesus now wants to reinvent himself as a winger. Ferran Torres is a natural winger that's now playing in the middle.
Because
I feel like
maybe he's doing that Phil Walcott thing where he's like, I can't be the striker here, so let me go back to he could be doing that. But I think
Brazilian Theo Walker, that should have been the name of the podcast, but it is.
But I think I think he just needs to figure out what he needs for himself next, because those comments about playing abroad were interesting, but were they a reality when you were number one in the City squad? I don't think so. Nowhere near. I think you were thinking, this is the team I play at. I'll probably go far here, maybe retire here because I'm winning things. I'm seen as a main man. My relationship with Pep Guardiola is great. But now that it's deteriorating, it's now like I need to look elsewhere. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think it's an issue with that. But this could also be a test. It could be let's see how you bounce back. When you get your game, because yesterday was only his third start of the season. Maybe in the league. I'm not sure if it's about overall all competitions, but first start of the season. And again, you didn't really do anything of merit. You didn't do anything to change the game. You weren't outstanding. You didn't even drop a 7. A 7 for me is what he would look for. Say, okay, maybe next week. But I think you give him that chance because of those comments that he made midweek. But look, he's got a lot to think about. He's got quite a bit to work on because this could be a test. And if you go to somewhere like Real Madrid, they're a lot more unforgiving. They're a lot more unforgiving. So if your level does not go up for them, it could be actually a worse scenario for you. So I just think he needs to
good point.
And think about what he does before he.
This is now his second season on the fringes because a lot of people looked at the Euro squad and said, "Is Southgate putting him in there on trust and the fact he's delivered before?" Because if you look at his appearances last season for City, he would be disappointed with that. And he's going to go through a second season of that. These guys want to play football. That's what they want to do. They want to get out there and play. And that alone, Grealish has only made that situation more complex at City for me. So it's an interesting one. I guess we watch it with interest and see what happens. And if he chooses to move on, then Bayern Munich buy all the wide men that are available, don't they? So it's not inconceivable they're putting in for him. But it's an interesting one.
Bayern, Real Madrid, Arsenal.
I don't think he go Bayern. I think they've got too many players.
They got way too many. Way too many. Arsenal. We got a left wing just waiting for him.
He could do one of those bad moves and go to Juventus and be part of that shocking system they have right now.
They're currently 8th. That's disgraceful. That's actually disgraceful.
It's Ronaldo's fault, by the way, that they're 8th.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there. Other teams that were in competition this weekend were Chelsea. They beat Brentford 1-0, and it took them a while. Ben Chilwell on the 45th minute it was a great finish. Can't take it away from him, but they didn't look that convincing. Is that something that Chelsea are, I wouldn't say proud of, but they know that their team isn't really in first, or I don't know, 5th, whatever gear it is. I don't drive cars in it, so whichever gear is the best gear. But there is more to come from this Chelsea team, or is it tactics? Is it tactical that they're not playing this expansive, beautiful football that Thomas Tuchel was known for from Borussia Dortmund, PSG, but he's not showing it at Chelsea?
Well, you can play that expansive football at Borussia Dortmund because everyone in the Bundesliga plays that kind of football. So you can expose the defense. If you don't approach in an attacking system, an attacking way, you're not doing yourself justice in that league. Borussia Dortmund have a lot more quality than most of the teams in that league, bar one. So, but I think, look, it looks like tactically they're getting a bit found out. They created chances. Don't get me wrong, they created chances against Brentford. Lukaku missed some chances that he should have scored. Werner did Werner. And, Lukaku even had an offside goal this time, which was rightly given for offside. But look, in that second half, Brentford really, really made them sweat. And that was not any sort of accident. That every sort of way they attacked, whether it was keeping the ball on the ground or where they targeted the aerial balls, were on purpose. And they found weaknesses and they were just unlucky that Mendy was in the form of his life. And if it wasn't Mendy, it was Trevor Chalobah making goal line clearances. And, so I think they're getting a bit found out because Lukaku is struggling to find chances, let alone find the back of the net. He's struggling to find chances, like clear-cut chances now.
6 games without a goal, isn't it?
6 or 7 now, without a goal. So that's a problem, number one. And you signed him to be your premier striker because Werner was not doing the job as your main goal scorer. So if he's not finding the net, back in the net, good for them at Chilwell. Alonso can add more goals, obviously, to the team as well. They've got some guys that can add goals to the GOAT team, but they're starting to get a bit found out tactically, and this is not going to be a one-time thing. This is going to be a reoccurrence. I think there's a bit of excitement where they beat Arsenal, but that Arsenal performance was very disjointed. Arsenal have looked better after that defeat. So I think Tuchel needs to find out what's going on, because this is not something where your luck is going to keep running for you. It's going to run out at some point, and it could be an exposing defeat, and it can start something going on. So they're doing well defensively in terms of statistically wise. They're looking very strong, but bit by bit, people are starting to find these little holes in them, and eventually, someone's going to get them. And when they're got, then there's going to be some trouble.
I mean, just nodding the head there, Steve. I mean, you is it down to Tuchel that he's not playing brilliantly? Like Chelsea aren't playing brilliantly.
So Chelsea thought if they signed themselves a marquee centre forward, he'll put away all the chances they created last season. Signing Romelu Lukaku, they've changed the way they play. Lukaku wants to play on the shoulder of a defender and terrorise him because he's big, he's strong, he's powerful, and why not? That's his strength. It's always been his strength. They've become a little bit one-dimensional with Lukaku in the side for me, and I got ridiculed big time for saying this just after they signed him on a pod. That could happen, and it has happened. Werner's still making intelligent runs because that's what he does, and he does make intelligent runs. Their number 10s are not firing. I think Tuchel's biggest challenge this season is to bring down the egos of Havertz and the Mount and say, hang on a minute, you might have won the Champions League, you might have been to a European 2020 final in Mason Mount's case, but you still have to make sure you do the ugly things in football, and you have to turn up every week, and you have to be grounded, and you have to be honest, and don't get ahead of yourself, and don't be prima donnas. And that's a big challenge. And I've seen that with Liverpool in years gone by. When we dominated, we brought in young lads, and they got ideas above their station. So that's a big challenge for Tuchel. Kojo's right. Big up for Brentford, because what Brentford are doing at the moment is when Liverpool and Chelsea go to Brentford this season, and Liverpool drew 3-3. The Liverpool game is Brentford's biggest game ever in their history. It's the top flight. It's Liverpool. It's at home. The fans turn up and they're at it. The players turn up and they're at it. And you know what? They're going to become my guilty pleasure this season, because they don't care who they're playing against. They've got no respect for reputation. They've got no respect for the names on the team sheet, the teams they're playing against. And they do their thing. And they will ask teams questions after questions after questions at their ground. They will be fine. They'll get enough points from home games alone to stay in the division. I think they've been a real breath of fresh air. And I'll close now by saying 4 or 5 weeks ago, Tuchel said, we want to become the team that nobody else wants to play. That's his own words. Does that mean he wants to make them so defensively robust you don't feel you can break them down? In doing that, there's a danger you overlook the other side of the game where you actually have to go and win it. And at the moment, I think Brentford had 10 chances against Chelsea, and Chelsea had 2 or 3. And
3,
the offside goal. That Premier marquee centre forward isn't scoring you the goals, and he's played in the Premier League before. And for 6 weeks he was brilliant, and then he go off the boil for a month. And you can't have that for £100 million. You can't have that. You've got to have a guy that turns up every week. So Chelsea's an interesting one, and I agree with Kojo. People are figuring them out a little bit, and you know, at the end of the day, as good of the likes of Thiago Silva is, 37 next birthday. 37-year-olds can't do it every week. And these young lads who came in at the weekend, they got worked over a little bit physically, and they came out of it because the keeper had a worldie. But he won't always be there to do that, and it'll be a deflection or something where he has no chance. But Chelsea are an interesting one. I will say we're saying all this, and by the way, they're sat top of the league, so we have to take that into context as well. But there are some questions and some chinks in their armour that teams will be looking at now.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback off the point that you made about them being one-dimensional, because I never thought about that. But it was making me think about last year when he came in. Kai Havertz at the beginning of his Chelsea career was getting criticised because he wasn't really finding his feet. And then he found a system that made Havertz be more productive, Mount be more productive, Kovacic was enjoying his football. Then, you had your wide men start to play a bit more. I mean, Ziyech not so much, which is something that's not being spoken about enough, but that's another day. He found a system, but then when you do buy that striker, that's now your centerpiece, as Steve said. And if you don't find a way to make sure he's productive, but make sure everyone else is still being as productive, or even if it's on a lower scale, it can't drop too far low. It needs to be at the tiniest of scales. If you're not doing that, then that does bring a big problem. So if they are going to win the league this year, they need to get that fast because Liverpool are now in their groove. City don't even look like they're in their groove, but they're winning games. Yeah. So if you want to be with them, they're going to keep going on that roll. You need to find your groove and stick with it before it becomes an issue.
I'll say this: they are getting found out, and I think the match that highlighted that was the City game. I'm like, okay, you've used that tactics against City. What was it, 3 times last season?
Yeah,
it worked. There's other, City had their preseason. They would have studied your style of play, and same as Everton, they would have studied your style of play from last season. So they, at that point, they would have found ways to counteract that if you're going to use that same system. They tried again against City, and I was watching that game thinking, you're surely not going to play the same way that you played against City last season. And City dominated the game. City didn't even need to get out of second, third gear to win that game because they're like, well, we found you out. We're not going to allow you. We're not going to make the same mistakes we made last season. And then secondly, my last point is more on Lukaku. I'm not surprised. Listen, I mean, the thing that annoys me the most about Lukaku is that he doesn't understand his weaknesses. And it annoys me because he will talk in the media and say, these people need to show me respect. I don't look to any other striker. There's no striker better than me. I'm the best. And I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely, because you're not clinical. You don't perform in big games. You don't perform consistently across the season. And so these are the markers why people do not rate you as highly as you rate yourself. Yes, you're a good striker. Yes, you do have attributes which are beneficial for a team, but you don't consistently perform in matches. And like I said, he's gone 6 games without scoring a goal, and it doesn't surprise me. It's typical Lukaku. At some point, he'll find his feet, start scoring again. But it's about scoring consistently across a season and scoring when it matters. And that's always been the issue I've had with Lukaku. And he doesn't seem to understand that because then he questions, why doesn't everyone put me up there with like the Kanes, with like the Lewandowskis and co's? And I was like, well, there's a reason why. All you have to do is compare their performances, the matches in which they perform against when your performances and when you perform or decide not to perform.
The final game that we will talk about will be Newcastle 2, Tottenham 3. Goals from Callum Wilson, Tanguy and Ndombele, Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, and Eric Dier. Own goal, obviously. Our thoughts are with the supporter that he had a heart attack, I believe.
Cardiac arrest.
Cardiac arrest. I believe he's stable right now. Yeah, I don't think.
Stable. Yeah, stable.
So yeah, our thoughts are with him. But on the game, I mean, on that as well, we got to commend Reguilon for spotting what was going on. Eric Dier for running across, getting the doctor to go help him out. And it's one of those things where it was one, he was lucky that he was pitch side, and 2, the fact that there are defibrillators now in the Premier League, it also helped him out wonderfully. But on the game, Callum Wilson obviously started. Got them off scoring, and it looked like it was going to be a great game for Newcastle. That everybody thought that Tottenham would pull out Spurs and just completely capitulate, but they didn't. I mean, let's talk about that first goal. It was just easy, just far too easy for Newcastle, Kojo.
That was it. Their first attack within the first minute. It was horrible. It was horrible from Spurs, but that's what they've been doing for a while. Lack of awareness at the back. And I think what opponents have now recognized is, so to be fair to the two of them, Romero and Emerson Royal are looking like they're starting to settle in well now. They're looking like they're starting to get a bit more comfortable, and you're seeing better performances from them. So obviously Romero was defender of the year at Serie A last year. So now you're starting to see that he's starting to get to his level. Bit by bit, he's getting there. Emerson had a nightmare debut, and then now he's starting to get into his groove. But what teams are doing is, well, if we can't attack you on this side, we're definitely going on the other side. And as soon as the ball switched over to that side, you saw Manquillo just making the galloping run past Saint-Maximin. And the cross was a good cross, don't get me wrong. But if you are the defender in front, which was, I think it was Eric Dier, if you're the defender ahead of Callum Wilson, there's no way you should be allowing him, no matter how good his movement is, to go and attack that ball. You should be first in line to defend that before he even gets a sniff of getting to that ball. And that's going to be, I think that's going to become a theme with Spurs as well. And I don't know how you solve that, because if it's not Eric Dier, it's Davinson Sanchez, and you know how I feel about both of them. Quite frankly, there is no level of improvement in either of them because Davinson Sanchez is still the same player that signed when he was 18 years old from Ajax. He hasn't improved, and Eric Dier is he's Eric Dier. Yeah, so it's an issue, but it was a good goal, and it was kind of goal that I think the fans were needing straight away because it's a new era, and there's a bit of excitement, there's a bit of energy, so they needed that. But just like Watford, as soon as Spurs got their goal, the breath was taken out of them. It rattled them completely. I don't think they expected that. These Newcastle players need to fight for their Newcastle careers, so to speak, because they know there's going to be major financial improvements in terms of spending on players. And a lot of players are at risk of losing their positions, including a certain John Joe Shelby, but we'll get there. So, it was a fantastic start. It was a a good goal. But,
Tanguy Ndombele, he gets the goal, and that was a great goal. But I think that was poor defending from Newcastle. But that's what we know Newcastle for. But the goal that impressed me the most and inspires this next question is Harry Kane back. Harry Kane obviously beats the offside trap with a wonderfully timed run, and then the finish was exquisite. Steve, is he back, or is it the simple fact that he likes to go against Newcastle? And
he made a typical number 9's run between two central defenders that they were in different postcodes, weren't they? The ball comes in, and Harry Kane will finish those all day long, good, bad, or indifferent form. I think you go back to the point on the first goal, almost the euphoria of Newcastle's current situation and the way the club are going to go forward made it obvious that Newcastle would start the game strongly because the players reacted to the response from the fans. Then what happened is they suddenly remembered, hang on a minute, we ain't got a clue what's going on here. Is the manager going to be there at the end of the game when we've got two years of unlimited spending before we have to fall in line with FFP, so they could spend £3 billion if they wanted to. So they're going to be throwing some. Yeah, he's playing for a move to Newcastle. Absolutely, great shout, Ron. So essentially, nobody has a clue what's going on up there. So very quickly, the goal deflated them, and they remembered that they're Newcastle and they struggle. Obviously, Dyer's own goal made it sort of look a bit more respectable. But that goal, the finish from Kane was brilliant. It really was, and it's typical of Kane's finishing prowess. Does it open the floodgates for the rest of the season? I'm not so sure. He could have brought that down, popped open the can of lager, sat on the chair, drunk it, then finished it. There was that much time to deal with that. But take nothing away from it. It is a great finish. His awareness of knowing where the goalkeeper was, his aerial when he makes contact with the ball. It's a mark of a world-class finisher. It really is. And the ball was tremendous as well to pick him out, by the way. So. It's a really good goal by Kane, and it absolutely knocked the stuffing out of Newcastle, didn't it?
Did indeed. Let's talk about Newcastle, Basil. As everybody's mentioned, there's a lot of players that won't be there in the next few seasons, and where they end up, I don't know. They might have destinations in the Championship, to be honest with you. But currently nothing seems to be improving. There's talks of getting rid of Steve Bruce, but I don't imagine anybody can save them from their current predicament with the squad that they have. The big question is, do you think they're going to stay up this season?
I was about to say that. No, they're going down, definitely. They're absolutely going down. The players there are so poor. They're not Premier League quality whatsoever. Like I said, if Richie is playing left back, Richie's not a good player. Wasn't a good player when he was at Bournemouth. And so, he's their left back because they don't have a left back. Callum Wilson can't stay fit. So you're wondering how many games do you have until he breaks down. Then they have to rely on Joe Linton. Joe Linton, you're guaranteed 0 goals from him each season. Like I said, if he gives you at least 2, you're popping out the champagne. He is so poor, it's unbelievable. And in that midfield, there's nothing in midfield whatsoever. Lascelles, honestly, Lascelles, he annoys me because he plays with an arrogance on that pitch. I've noticed he has this arrogance that he's this top quality defender, and he's not. That team is going down. And the problem they have is that if they sack Bruce, who's going to manage that group of players? Because you need a relegation specialist to manage those group of players. And so, and that's the truth. You can bring in a top quality manager. I don't think they can work with that crop of players there. Every time I watch them, they're always hoping, saying Maximan, work some magic for them. And if he doesn't, you get nothing out of anybody else. I generally think they should go out and hedge their bets on Allardyce. As silly as it's, I think they need a relegation specialist to come work with these players, get them organised defensively, find a system where they can sneak victories, and obviously just stay up. Because if not, I see them going down. I see them going down with Norwich, honestly.
Wowza. I mean, Rafa Benitez probably kicking himself considering all the money that he's probably would have had to spend on this squad. And to be honest, I think if he stayed, they would have been in a much better position than they are currently.
100%.
But man, we need to wrap it up there. There are games going on. Arsenal are currently 1-0 up against Crystal Palace. Aubameyang with the goal, but the table looks as follows.
We're coming for United, so that's what I'm saying.
What's that?
We're coming for United. That's the last thing. I would say Liverpool, but that's delusion. So that's
a bit too far. Chelsea are top of the league. Liverpool second. City third. Brighton, Hove Albion are still in the top 4 race. Fourth. Tottenham fifth. United, Manchester sixth. West Ham seventh. Arsenal are 9th. Leicester are 12th. And the bottom 3, Burnley, Newcastle, and Norwich. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching on whichever or whatever platform you choose to listen on. Make sure you subscribe and like this video. It helps us a lot. But Basil, where can they find you?
You can find me at BJcus14. As you can see, I packed up a bit more now. Arsenal are now winning. We're getting points on the board. And my enemies, they seem to be falling down the table, i.e. Manchester United. Tottenham are just scraping victories, but already they'll be down there soon. So it's a good time. It's a good time to follow me, and it's a good time to see my tweets.
Can I just say, if you don't come away with this game with all 3 points, Basil will just block me on WhatsApp. That's what I'm going to say.
Steve, where can they find you?
My socials are on there. I've just restarted my channel under a rebranding called Copped Pods. It's very, very early days with that. You can also catch me at 10 o'clock tonight on First XI. And then I do 2 shows or 1 show or 2 shows some weeks over on Usman's channel doing the Big Six rivals and the UCL preview. So, I've been busy at the moment, but really, really grateful for the opportunity to come on Talk Football, you guys. Nice to meet 2 of you. I've been on with Kojo before. Yeah. Thanks again for inviting me. I enjoyed that.
Pleasure to meet you, Steve.
Absolutely pleasure.
Kojo, where can they find us?
Obviously over here on YouTube, Free Midfield Podcast, and everywhere else on all the audio socials, Twitter, Free Midfield. For last time, I'm going to say this because I was asked in person, is it the word 3? No, it's the number 3 in midfield as a collective. No space. There you go. 3 in midfield. Come follow us.
I mean, we've had it on for like God knows how many podcasts, but it is what it is, man. Thank you for watching and good night.